Can Alex Albon save his F1 career? The Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix was very much a snapshot of Alex Albon's year so far. A messy Q2 meant he had to start the race on soft tyres, and that, as well as qualifying behind Pierre Gasly and Daniel Ricciardo, as well as his teammate, consigned him to a long toil in the midfield. And then he spun at the final restart, and the outbreak of face palming in the Red Bull garage told its own story. So, can Alex Albon save his Formula One career? I'm Stuart Codling from GP Racing Magazine, and joining me to chew over what may just be the wreckage in progress of a Formula One career is motorsport.com's F1 editor, Jon Noble. So, Johnny, obviously Red Bull have said they're not going to make a decision until the end of the year, but what can Alex do to sort of turn things around? It's not looking good, is it?
No, I think he has been in need of a big step forward. He made that breakthrough podium at Mugello, an important result for him. Christian Horner said at the time that he hoped it would, lift his confidence. That it's one thing believing you can deliver a result like that, but another thing actually achieving it. So, hopes were high after Mugello, there'd be a step forward, but that step hasn't come for some reason. There's not really. He struggled again with that rear end of the car. It's been a consistent problem all season. The pressure's coming up. Nico Hülkenberg's, stand-in performance for Racing Point and Nürburgring put him back in the frame. Sergio Perez is available. You've got two experienced drivers knocking on the door. And at a time when Alex needs some good results, I'm not saying beating Max Verstappen, but being close to Max Verstappen, it's just not happening.
Do we think that in some ways the problem isn't the occupant of the second Red Bull garage? It's actually the car itself. You mentioned the rear end instability that has been endemic in the Red Bull package for quite a few seasons now. And Christian Horner himself has said there's not many drivers that can live with that. So perhaps Red Bull need to stop relying on the talents of a once-in-a-generation talent such as Max Verstappen and create a car that is a little bit easier to drive, because if they were to bin off Alex at the end of this season, it's not necessarily a given that slotting Nico Hülkenberg or even, say, Sergio Perez into that seat would deliver the performance uplift they need.
Yeah, I think it's clear that Alex has been given a tough brief this year. The RB16 car has been difficult. It was Red Bull's problem at the start of the year. The driver issue wasn't a big problem as we began this campaign because both Max and Alex were struggling with the car. I spoke to Alex a few weeks ago. He talked about that Max has the ability to hustle the car, that when you're pushing it on the edge in qualifying, and the car's moving around a lot and the risk of the rear snapping out, Max is much more comfortable dealing with that. Alex isn't. He lacks that confidence to push, and then it leaves Red Bull in a tricky scenario because they move to make the car quicker. So Max wants more front end, wants that grip to come in the corners, and then the rear gets skittish. So the car theoretically gets better, and then Alex wants it to be more comfortable, but you put a setup on the car to make it comfortable, like we saw at the Spanish Grand Prix early this year. You give him a comfortable setup, it's not quick, so you're kind of stuck in this middle ground of moving in one direction to make the car quicker, which makes it worse for Alex. Then you make the car better for Alex, and it makes the car theoretically worse. So it's a tricky scenario, and I think we see this disparity at Ferrari this season, that as that Ferrari car has developed, it's gone towards Charles Leclerc's driving style. He's another one who can cope better with an unstable car, with an unstable platform, doesn't need the rear of the car gripping as much as Sebastian Vettel does, and that's why you have these huge gulfs, and it's very, very complicated for teams to sort. But unfortunately, Red Bull's in a scenario where it can't afford to have one driver pushing their fight in the Mercedes and the other one not acting at the very least as a rear gunner.
Quite an interesting proposition, that, isn't it? You mentioned Sebastian Vettel's name. Obviously, when he drove for Red Bull, they were doing all sorts of tricks, blowing the diffuser and all that sort of thing that gave him that downforce at the back and that confidence he needed. And 4 world championships eventuated. But I bet if you dropped him in alongside Max Verstappen now, he would get his backside kicked, wouldn't he?
I think so. I think Max, this car and what Max is able to do in Formula 1 at the moment, he's just pushing on. I think Toto Wolff said to us on Sunday night that he's clinging on with his fingertips to those two Mercedes, and we've got a Formula 1 with 3 amigos at the front. I don't think the expectation on Alex from Red Bull is that they want him to be going out there and smashing Max Verstappen and the pair of them fighting each other tooth and nail. They don't believe that that's a realistic prospect. But what they do need is a driver who can be within 3 tenths of Max, can shadow Max in the races, and basically shut off the strategic options for Mercedes. Because I think what Imola highlighted was once Max had stopped, Mercedes options would have been much fewer if Alex Albon was there behind, and Mercedes couldn't be sure of not being stuck behind Albon for a while. So it's this rear gunner mentality that's important. And ultimately, this is what cost Pierre Gasly his drive back in 2018 in that famous race in Hungary, where it was Max Verstappen v Lewis Hamilton. And basically the win was handed to Lewis because Pierre Gasly was not in a position to protect Max and the strategy.
Yeah, when you have that huge gap between third and fourth, then it does really limit Red Bull's options. They can press the button and scare Mercedes into responding with one pit stop, can't they? But Mercedes are never going to cover off the undercut twice.
No, you can cover one car easily. And what Imola highlighted as well was once they discussed this on race morning, that one of the Mercedes would need to cover Max Verstappen, and the other one would do something different to cover him the other way. So either way, if Bottas hadn't run over Vettel's end plate and damaged the car, either way, one of those Mercedes was going to beat Max Verstappen, with or without any strategy calls, because you can't cover 2 cars with 1 car. So this is the problem Red Bull have got. And what they have to weigh up, principally, if Alex cannot lift his game and cannot get into that position, is whether they go for Sergio Perez or Nico Hülkenberg, because there's so little to choose between those two in terms of experience, speed, results, personality. I think it's actually quite an even call between them.
Do you think that maybe the long-term solution for Red Bull is to design a kind of more driver-friendly car? You know, there's that quote that's popularly attributed to Albert Einstein, that the definition of stupidity is repeating a failed course of action, expecting a different outcome. And when you have a car that's patently difficult to drive, it relies on a once-in-a-generation talent to get the most out of it and to outperform the car, as we kind of agree. Just having this rotating cast of characters in the second seat isn't really addressing that problem. And I suppose maybe we have to sort of say that situation is not going to change next year, whoever's in the car, because we have this situation where the cars have a very limited development runway through 2021 before we get this new car concept in 2022.
Well, I think Red Bull's concept in the past kind of worked when they had Daniel Ricciardo around. These blown diffuser cars that Seb Vettel thrived in. Not everyone was able to cope with them as well. Mark Webber wasn't as comfortable with it as Seb Vettel was. Then as we moved into the hybrid era, Daniel Ricciardo was able to cope with, a very tricky Red Bull in that year with the Renault engine, the transition and the heavier cars. And then obviously Verstappen is brilliant. And everything worked fine for Red Bull, pushed the car in directions that suited Verstappen. Ricciardo could cope with it. And as Daniel's shown this year at Renault, sensational driver. He's pushed that team forwards. He's delivered a setup that's working. He's helped produce the sweet spot. He's delivered them podium finishes. I think it's shown what a top class driver Daniel Ricciardo is. And I think Red Bull's almost been hampered by Ricciardo's departure, because they promoted Pierre Gasly. It was a driver they didn't seem particularly eager to bring up to Formula One. It wasn't as if there was the red carpet rolled out. They sent him to Japan to go in Super Formula. Didn't seem to be the fast track that someone like Vettel had up to F1 or Daniel Ricciardo. Then obviously the Gasly situation didn't work out, and they promoted Alex Albon, another driver who'd been dropped by the Red Bull program, had actually been out of Formula One completely before he got the call up to what was then Toro Rosso. So you've had 2 very young drivers, a lot less experience, potentially at this stage of their careers not as good as Daniel Ricciardo has been. So I think maybe the mistake Red Bull's made has been focusing on promoting from within, rather than a few years ago maybe looking for someone with the experience and the talent and this ability to be psychologically strong against Max Verstappen, which they may well end up having to do for next season now.
I think that wraps up the situation very well, Johnny. Thank you very much. And the time has come for you guys to let us know what you think. Have your thoughts in the comments section below. Do Red Bull need to slot in a more experienced driver, or can Alex Albon find something deep within himself to rescue his Formula career? Let us know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe to see more videos like this.